fasting, I think like I can't have anything, but are you saying I can have coffee? What am I allowed during this fasting period?
Well, let's talk about, of course, plain water. Yes. Nothing added to it, no flavors. Plain sparkling water is also fine. But, people sometimes say, well, how come I can have black coffee and plain tea? Because those have flavors. Well, they do have flavors, but they have a bitter flavor profile. And a bitter flavor profile is not associated with a cephalic phase insulin response. So, the black coffee is actually stimulating autophagy. We have not used the word autophagy yet, but autophagy is our body's powerful cellular housekeeping. It's like recycling and upcycling, where our bodies during the fast can go in and clear up old junky proteins and really clean up things. Also, it's great for our immune systems. They can really function best during the fasted state. And black coffee is likely to stimulate those processes. It even, helps with fat burning. And so black coffee is a great thing to add into your fast. Now, if you find that black coffee makes you hungrier, if you don't want to have the coffee, you're not required to have the coffee. You can just stick to water if you want. But black coffee does tend to stimulate the things we want to have going on during the fast.
And Tim, any thoughts on that? I remember we had a lot of debate when we were doing our big ZOE Predict studies about whether or not you can have teas and coffees during fasted periods.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows absolutely for sure because the tests haven't been done. So we're just getting an expert consensus on this, really. But most people do believe in the fasting world that yes, black teas, green teas, coffees, water are perfectly fine. Where people start to disagree is, can I have just a drop of, a macchiato in my coffee, just that tiniest little drop? And some people say, if it's less than equivalent of, I don't know, 10 or 20 calories, it's probably okay. Your body probably won't be able to sense that as a meal and therefore break its fast. Other people, I think, like Jin, would probably say that avoid that could be counterproductive and you actually lose all your benefits. I don't think we quite know yet. It may be that Jin's actually tried it herself and seen any difference.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a whole section in Fast Feast Repeat where I talk about the clean fast, and there is at the end of that there are 2 chapters about the clean fast, and there's a section where I have anecdotal stories from intermittent fasters. And, I've been in the intermittent fasting community since well before I ever wrote any books at all or had podcasts, really in, 2014, 2015, started with the support groups on Facebook. And anecdotally, the difference between fasting clean and, putting a little bit of this, a little bit of that, the bulletproof coffee, a little bit of butter, all the things that people might be, putting in there, the difference is night and day. And you have to really experience it for yourself. So anybody who's putting in a little sweetener or a little drop of cream or whatever, and you're like, it's fine, it works for me, I'm still losing weight, I feel okay, I would challenge you to try it with the clean fast. Give yourself 30 days. I call it the clean fast challenge. Go to plain black coffee, plain tea, plain water, nothing flavored, nothing sweetened, nothing to lighten up your coffee. I've never had anybody try it for 30 days and then go back to the other way. So, you just take that challenge and try it for yourself and see. Most people report that they can't believe the difference that it makes.
So this is another example where what you're saying is, anecdotally seeing this in practice,
yeah.
This is a model that works.
Whatever the mechanism is, whatever's going on behind the scenes, I can give you the theory as to what I think why it's easier without all that, based on what we do know. Here are the theories. But in practice, you'll just see you're not white knuckling it. You're not hangry. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, I really can fast till 3:00 and I feel great. Whereas before, when you were having that little bit of almond milk or a little bit of cream or the butter or the MCT oil or whatever, that you saw a YouTube video that said it was okay, you leave that out and you're like, wow, the whole experience is different.
This is all back to, this is just very new and not very well studied. So Jin, just to play back to like somebody listening trying to do this. So I need to go to a clean fast. When I'm fasting, I need to only have like this water and tea and coffee. Do I immediately go to like some constrained period on day 1 and stick with it? Help me to understand what else I do in this 28 days.
That's a great question. And we have in Fast Feast Repeat, in the 28-day fast start chapter, there are 3 different plans you can kind of choose from that are helping you adapt. You might need to be someone who really eases in and starts slow. I'm not suggesting anyone start with what I'm doing as like day one. You've really got to build up to it. I like to compare it to couch to 5K. If someone wants to go run a 5K, you don't get off the couch on day 1 and run a 5K. You have to build up to it. And so fasting is the same way. We're very much building up our fasting, quote, muscle, right? It's not technically a muscle, but you know what I mean with that analogy. So you're building up to it. And that's what the 28 days is really for. You're learning how to fast clean. There are going to be days where you feel hangry and you have to open your window earlier than you expected. And that's not a fail. That's just part of the process. We're learning to listen to our bodies. We never want to feel shaky, like you're having a blood sugar crash. If you're ever shaky or nauseous, go ahead and eat. Forget about what the plan said to do that day. Go ahead and eat. And, gradually, as your body gets adapted, you'll find, what feels good to you. Some people always feel better with a midday eating window. For example, they like to, skip breakfast, eat lunch, have a little maybe early kind of dinner, close their window. No couch snacking on chocolate for them because their window is closed, but they sleep better when they have that middle of the day eating window. I'm not one of those people. I actually sleep better when my window is closer to bedtime. I've tried it all different ways. I wait till afternoon, open my window, eat till I'm satisfied, close my window. But only through experimentation have I learned that. You're not going to learn that in the first 28 days. It's very much a process. And your goal is to think of intermittent fasting as a lifestyle. I interviewed a longevity expert for intermittent fasting stories, Dr. Gil Blander. He has a company now that does some things with biomarkers, but he has studied longevity in general. And he said to me, this was a couple of years ago, but he said he believes that one of the most powerful things we can do to increase longevity is intermittent fasting. Just have that piece in there. Understand, why we're doing it. I don't want anybody to start intermittent fasting only because you might lose some weight. That's not what intermittent fasting really is all about. Of course, I came to it for the weight loss. I like to say, we come for the weight loss, but we stick around for the health benefits. You just have to experience it to see what we're talking about.
Amazing. And Tim, can you tell us a bit about that value of that window length? Because you could say, hey, lots of people are eating for 18 hours a day today because of the way that the world works. And what really matters is just to shrink that to 12, which is still like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? That's pretty different from, shrinking it to much shorter periods too. I think that I've heard you, Tim, talk a bit about some of those, perhaps the microbiome having at least part of the answer to that story.